How absurd is this Blake Lively case turning into? Well, it could affect all harassment law moving forward and all of Hollywood film production. We brought in Greg Dahl. Let's talk this out. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signor. So honored to have Greg Dahl back to the show. Greg, welcome back. How are you doing, man?
It's great to be back. I'm a huge fan of yours, and it's good to be back on your channel. I really appreciate it.
You've been on a handful of times, not as much as others, but people still remember, like, oh my God, that Greg guy was so great. Please bring him back. We've been trying, and now we are. I'm so glad to have you back. I guess it's important before we start into this whole thing.
This case is so absurd from a sexual harassment standpoint, it's jaw-dropping, proclaimed legal expert Greg Dahl, his voice laced with disbelief. After a deep dive into the filings, Dahl, who represents Hollywood's elite, revealed the entire Blake Lively lawsuit is built on trivial, very small incidents that are massively blown out of proportion. This isn't just about a celebrity scandal, it's a legal earthquake threatening to damage the very concept of sexual harassment law for everyone. The implications for Lively's career and reputation are now truly catastrophic. This isn't just a misstep, it's a potential career-ending blunder. The evidence against her own claims is mounting, and the legal world is watching in stunned silence.
The summary judgment papers, and I called you because I'm just appalled. I think this case is so absurd from a sexual harassment standpoint on Blake Lively's side. I feel like it's a bunch of very minute, small incidents that are blown massively out of proportion. And I think it actually just does damage to the concept of sexual harassment suits generally, because I think these are just trivial, very small events that they're trying to milk into big events that really just don't belong in a federal lawsuit in New York, where you've got like 1,300 docket entries.
The initial perception of this high-profile case was already fraught with questions, but the new legal analysis lays bare an even more shocking reality. Greg Dahl, initially neutral, was called in for his objective expertise, having represented powerful clients in similar legal battles across California. He approached the 1,300 docket entries with an open mind, ready to unravel the complex web of accusation. What he discovered, however, would shift his perspective entirely, painting a stark picture of a case far different from what the public had been led to believe. This isn't just a casual observation, it's a professional assessment that could alter the entire trajectory of the legal proceeding.
Clearly going to carve up some part of this case. What's he going to let go? Here's what I feel about the case after reading it. I feel that Lively is pissed off that there was a PR campaign afterwards and she lost the PR campaign, right? That's the real claim that she feels angry about. And then the sexual harassment claim is just really designed to try to get some sort of, public sentiment against Baldoni, to get some sort of thing that she was wrong as a victim. I don't think it's a real case. I don't think it's a legit case. As I look at this, there's a few things. I think Lyman is likely going to put out an order that carves up a lot of this case.
Dahl's pause from the case allowed him to return with fresh eyes, devoid of prior biases, solely focused on the summary judgment papers. The experience was, in his own words, appalling. He immediately contacted the hosts, compelled to share his profound concern. His conclusion was unequivocal. He stands firmly on Blake Lively's side, not because of personal loyalty, but due to the utter lack of substance in the plaintiff's sexual harassment allegations. This isn't a minor disagreement, it's a fundamental challenge to the very foundation of the lawsuit, threatening to dismantle it piece by piece under legal scrutiny. The expert's sudden strong stance sends shockwaves through the ongoing legal battle.
Action. The person gets fired, the person gets demoted, the person loses money. None of that happened here. It seems like the overwhelming evidence is that she was in the power seat here. She didn't lose any income, she didn't lose anything. The only thing she lost was the PR campaign afterward. And I think that's the real gravamen of what she's complaining about, and she's just dressing it up into this sexual harassment claim. I don't think it's a viable claim, but I do think there's a strong chance that Lyman's going to let something go through. I just don't know what at this point.
Yeah, there was that whole PGA letter. I'm trying to find it quickly. The docket is just filled with a million things, but she wrote that PGA letter. I don't know if you saw that specific part, but literally.
The core of Dahl's argument hinges on the nature of the alleged incidents, which he describes as very new, small incidents that were then blown massively out of proportion. He asserts that these events are so trivial that they should never have escalated into a federal lawsuit in New York. The sheer volume of legal documents, over 100 docket entries, highlights the absurdity of the situation, given what Dahl perceives as a gaping hole in actual harassment. This isn't just an opinion, it's a professional assessment of legal merit, suggesting the entire premise is fatally flawed, a house of cards waiting to collapse under judicial review.
And that they were out to smear her and they had all these different influencers on their payroll. I don't see any of that. I don't see anything of that. I think what I see is that she got exposed as sort of a mean girl in multiple things, that public opinion started turning against her, that suddenly that Baldoni became the underdog and Baldoni became, people became pro Baldoni. She hated the way that it went. It tanked her cosmetics line and she's upset about that. That's all a legitimate claim in court. She may lose, and I think she will, but that's all a legitimate claim in court. But to then all of a sudden try to bury him with the
Perhaps the most damaging revelation from the expert's perspective is how this particular case could do damage to the concept of sexual harassment suits generally. Dahl, having litigated many serious sexual harassment claims, believes this lawsuit trivializes the legitimate struggles of true victim. By attempting to milk minor events into significant legal battles, it risks eroding public trust and undermining the very protections designed for those genuinely suffering. This isn't merely a legal misstep, it's a potentially catastrophic precedent for future harassment law, casting a long shadow over the crucial safeguards meant to protect individuals in the workplace.
Involving two people on a dance floor, that there can be no improvisation, we've gotten to a point of ridiculousness. Because yes, there's a line that you cannot cross when you're with somebody of the opposite sex, but if you are an actor getting paid to do a romantic dance scene, and you're saying you cannot ever improvise at all, or if you do, you will be sued, that's a weird, extreme position to take. I don't like it. And then the other guy walks into her trailer and accidentally might have seen something, and then she says, I know you didn't try to cop a look. And that becomes the basis of the sexual harassment claim? I mean, give me a break. And then there's this.
The lack of substance regarding the sexual harassment claims is for Dahl the most staggering aspect. He emphasizes that typical harassment cases involve conduct beyond the balance of decency, a component he simply does not see here. Instead, he finds a series of isolated minor interactions that, while perhaps uncomfortable, do not meet the high legal threshold for severe or pervasive harassment. This isn't a nuanced interpretation, it's a blunt assessment of evidential weakness, suggesting the prosecution is grasping at straws, trying to construct a case where genuine legal grounds are conspicuously absent, further jeopardizing lively standing.
Harassment only came in late as a justification to put in this retaliation lawsuit? Because she needs them both to sort of exist, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the sexual harassment claim is being used as a weapon to try to enhance her PR campaign. And like, you know, when you deal with sexual harassment claims, there's typically a couple elements to them. Number one, there's a power differential. There's somebody who's in a boss position who is harassing someone who is in a lesser position. That did not exist here. Secondly, there's always an adverse employment action. The person gets demoted, loses money, loses a job, loses reputation. That didn't happen here.
So, if the sexual harassment claims are so weak, what is the true motivation behind this monumental legal battle? Dahl offers a stark answer. Blake Lively is pissed off that a post-production PR campaign turned against her, and she lost that public relations war. He argues that the sexual harassment claim is primarily designed to try to get some sort of public sentiment against Baldoni, rather than being a legitimate pursuit of justice. This isn't about legal redress, it's about a frustrated attempt to control a narrative that spiraled out of her grasp, using the courtroom as a weapon in a very public and damaging battle for perception.
So I feel for Baldoni, I feel for the people who are getting caught up in this thing, because I just feel like, and I feel for you getting your record subpoenaed and having to go spend money on lawyers when you got a clear journalist privilege. And by the way, that's one thing that just burns me up about this case. Modern day journalism is moving away from mainstream publications and newspapers into the internet sphere because people are not bought and paid for on the internet. And this just shows exactly the courts are not caught up to where society is. because you are a modern day journalist. You proved that in the Depp heard. You got ahead of this thing way before anybody else did and called BS on what was going on. And that's what
A critical element missing from Lively's claims, according to the legal expert, is any adverse employment action. In valid harassment cases, the victim typically suffers tangible consequences, being fired, demoted, losing money, or facing a damaged reputation. Yet, none of this happened to Lively. She retained her position, her income, and her standing. This absence significantly undermines the legal viability of her claims, suggesting a lack of genuine harm. It's a key legal requirement that the prosecution has failed to establish, revealing a foundational weakness that could ultimately lead to the dismissal of her most severe allegations. Further complicating Lively's narrative, the overwhelming evidence suggests she was actually in the power seat during the production. This directly contradicts the typical power differential seen in sexual harassment cases, where a person in authority harasses someone in a lesser position. Rather than being a vulnerable party, Lively appears to have wielded significant influence, further eroding the credibility of her claims. This isn't just a minor detail, it's a critical reversal of roles that reshapes the entire dynamic of the alleged harassment, making her victimhood narrative difficult to sustain under legal scrutiny and public perception alike. Given the glaring weaknesses, Judge Lyman is expected to carve up some part of this case, as he himself remarked that he can't be right that everything's gonna go to the jury. The judge's skepticism is a major red flag for Lively's team, indicating that many of her flimsy claims are unlikely to survive pretrial motions. While a smear campaign allegation might proceed, the core sexual harassment claims face an uphill battle. This isn't a minor setback, it's a clear signal that the court recognizes the lack of genuine legal merit, potentially stripping the lawsuit of its most sensational and damaging elements before it even reaches a jury. The specific instances cited as harassment are revealed to be shockingly trivial. They include an alleged improvisation during a romantic dance scene, a fleeting accidental glimpse in a trailer, and a question about weight purportedly due to a back injury. These completely flimsy evidence points are, in Dahl's view, far from the egregious conduct required for a federal lawsuit. He argues that in any real-world office scenario, such incidents would be resolved with a simple conversation, not escalating into thousands of docket entries. This isn't just weak, it's almost comically insufficient, further undermining the gravity of Lively's accusations. Crucially, the expert points out that each alleged instance of impropriety was addressed and promptly stopped. There were no repeat offenses of the same problem, meaning once an issue was raised, the behavior ceased. This pattern directly counters the narrative of ongoing, pervasive harassment. If the behavior stopped when called out, it suggests a responsiveness that undercuts the claim of a hostile environment. This isn't an isolated detail, it's compelling evidence that challenges the very nature of the alleged harassment, indicating a willingness to correct course rather than persistent malicious intent, making a strong case for dismissal. Adding another layer of complexity, Lively herself acknowledged that during the second phase of production, after she really put her foot down, everything was smooth and sailing. This admission further weakens the narrative of continuous harassment, demonstrating that when direct action was taken, the problem ceased. The timing of the harassment claims appearing much later suggests they were a strategic move, a justification to put in this retaliation lawsuit. This isn't a coincidence, it's a pattern that implies a calculated legal maneuver, rather than a genuine and immediate pursuit of justice for ongoing harm. The most damning accusation is that the sexual harassment claim itself is being used as a weapon to try to enhance her PR campaign. With no power differential and no adverse employment action against Lively, her legal team appears to be leveraging the gravity of harassment allegations to win public sympathy and damage Baldoni's reputation. This isn't about seeking justice for a genuine grievance, it's about a strategic and potentially damaging misuse of serious legal protections for personal and professional gain, turning the courtroom into an arena for public opinion, which could have severe ramifications for her own public image. Lively's own actions post-production contradict her victim narrative, particularly her PGA letter and other communications. In these, she took full ownership of producing and directing the film, claiming credit for its cut, scenes, and marketing. This assertive stance as a creative force and decision-maker directly undermines her portrayal as a vulnerable victim. Such evidence reveals a stark contrast between her legal claims and her professional conduct, raising serious questions about the authenticity of her allegations. This isn't a minor inconsistency, it's a profound contradiction that could prove devastating to her case in court. The notion of a smear campaign against Lively is also critically examined. The expert asserts that it was Lively herself who started it by leaking the Employment Division complaint to the New York Times, setting off the entire chain of public scrutiny. This strategic leak, rather than a natural unfolding of events, ignited a media firestorm that eventually turned against her. The public backlash, therefore, wasn't an orchestrated attack, but a reaction to her own initial aggressive PR tactics. This isn't an external conspiracy, it's a boomerang effect, where her own actions created the very public relations disaster she now decries. Despite allegations of a massive bot campaign or paid influencers, the legal expert found no evidence of any of that. The idea that a vast orchestrated smear campaign was run out of Texas, with a network of influencers on payroll, simply doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Instead, Dahl believes that Lively got exposed as sort of a mean girl in multiple instances, causing public opinion to naturally turn against her, transforming Baldoni into an underdog figure. This isn't a hidden conspiracy, it's the unfiltered, organic response of the public to her perceived behavior, demonstrating a serious miscalculation on her part. The consequence of this miscalculation was severe and immediate. Lively hated the way that it went. It tanked her cosmetic line. Her reputation, rather than being smeared by external forces, was buried herself by her own actions and the public's reaction to them. The expert firmly states that the public turned against her due to her unbelievably behavior, such as disinviting Baldoni from the premiere of what was essentially his film. This isn't an unfair outcome, it's a direct repercussion of her choices, leading to a profound and self-inflicted blow to both her brand and public image. Even Judge Lyman, while trying to be fair, faces scrutiny for throwing out Baldoni's counterclaims so early, which Dahl believes did not seem fair. This swift dismissal before more information emerged hints at a potential imbalance in the court's initial handling of the intertwined cases. However, the judge has since shown critical skepticism towards Lively's arguments, indicating an awareness of the landmark case implications for sexual harassment law. His navigation is delicate. He must prevent trivialization without stifling genuine claims, a tightrope walk with high stakes for both parties and the broader legal landscape. Ultimately, the best possible outcome for Blake Lively, according to the expert, would be for her case to be dismissed by the judge, allowing her to save face by blaming the judicial process. However, if this flimsy case proceeds to trial, the consensus is that she's going to lose on these claims. Baldoni has a story to tell, a narrative supported by evidence that directly contradicts Lively's. The entire lawsuit, built on what Dahl calls an absurd premise, where common sense has left the building, threatens to deliver a devastating career-altering blow, a metaphorical life sentence for her public image and future endeavors.